Okay, I've hit the record button and we're on. So this is like a topic that is very close to home for me because before I became a freelancer, I did not know anything about imposter syndrome because I've never experienced it. I live in Nigeria. The whole country is black. Everybody looks like me. Let's just say the zenith of me ever experiencing imposter syndrome was probably as a female, but never as a black person. So this was like a first time. And then I became a freelancer. I started working with white people, and boom, it was like I was thrust right in the heat of racism, imposter syndrome, everything. And then suddenly I started having this feeling, oh, nothing you do is ever going to be enough. Do you even deserve to be in the room with these people? So this is something that I started learning later on that affects all black people, even the ones who are successful, they still deal with imposter syndrome. So I want to start with the first question that came to my mind every time I think of this. What does imposter syndrome mean to you? I'm going to start with Jamar. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word imposter syndrome? How does it make you feel?
For me, imposter syndrome is
you have to on your mic on Clubhouse. It's mute. You're mute on Clubhouse.
Can you hear me now?
No, you're mute on Clubhouse. You turn on your mic on Clubhouse.
Okay, yeah. There we go. All right. Yay, technology. All right. So imposter syndrome is when you are filled with the ideas of other people telling you who you should be, and they don't fill you up with the knowledge, the skills, and the ability to be who you are. So growing up, I was a light-skinned black dude with green eyes, majority white high schools, but I was never white enough for the white kids. I was never black enough for the black kids. So the black kids always called me white boy because of the light skin, and I like to read and write versus play sports. The white kids would never let me play because I was one of them. And so I spent my youth trying to become the people that everyone wanted me to be. And it was so fake. It was fake to me, and it was fake to other people, and it was never good enough for them. And that for me, that's where I started to understand what the imposter syndrome is because you don't know who you are, no one else does, and they just tell you be this, that, or this other thing, and it's never good enough for anyone, including yourself.
Yeah, that seems to be like the key word, never good enough. Like you walk into a room, no matter what you achieve, no matter how good you are, never good enough. Edwin, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word imposter syndrome, and how does it make you feel?
Yeah, so for me, well, first, are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, cool. So
yep.
I think for me, imposter syndrome is something, I think it's more aligned with, it's internal. It's not necessarily not having a voice, but I think it's more around having a different type of voice, one that's negating your potential. But that is ultimately, I felt, a symptom of this underrepresentation in my field. And honestly, that's not a jab at anyone in my field or it's angst. It's just how it is. I grew up on the northwest side of Chicago where there were Puerto Rican folks, Hispanic folks, Black folks. So that existed up until the end of my, that didn't exist, it didn't stop existing, but I would be accustomed to that up until the end of my college years. And then when I entered the workforce, you're so used to being with people of color, then that goes away. That goes away, but it basically, it's replaced by a sea of Caucasian faces. And not just taking the skin color into consideration, but the topics discussed. I grew up with guys where we would get up to no good around the area. We would go walk around, hang out, get elotes, corn on the cob from the local elote man. But these are conversations that may not persist as heavily with folks in the, I guess, my career, at least not at the onset of it. So for me, I think to a degree, it's underrepresentation, but what it had done to me and what I felt my potential actually was, what I was contributing and my role, my job. And that ultimately has taken me from me being a level digital marketer to a manager, and it's stuff that I still try to reel in from time and again.
Okay, so that's interesting because what you're saying is basically that imposter syndrome prevented you from always like reaching that point that you were trying to reach because you felt like you did not have the support that you should have had in words.
I think to a degree, for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting because already we've started discussing the causes of imposter syndrome, especially as it relates to Black and colored people. Because I always tell people when I hear white people talking about imposter syndrome, I'm like, yeah, sure, you guys have imposter syndrome, you go through it, but it hits differently for Black people. And there are so many reasons for that. Jamar, what do you think are the reasons why colored BIPOC people have a different experience, completely different experience with imposter syndrome when compared to white people?
We're asked to assimilate. It's always take who you are and join the dominant culture, but don't bring any part of who your culture is and what you believe and what you love into the dominant culture. At least that was my experience. It was, if you speak with ghetto slang, get rid of that. That's not professional. If you have an afro, cut it down. That's not professional. If you have facial hair, cut it down. That's not professional. Depending on the clothes, you got the new Jordans. Don't wear those to work. That's not professional. Why? I've seen people wearing sweatpants to work, but I can't wear, my Air Jordans to work. So it's telling us in a very rule segmented way who you are, how you grew up, the things that you love do not belong in this bigger thing when they should. And especially in work, it was always the thing that really pushed the imposter syndrome on me during work was it was always, hey, we want new ideas as long as they're just new versions of the old ideas we thought of before. And so anytime I would bring a new idea, it was, well, that's great, but can't you do it like this? And so that's not a new idea. That's just the idea that you had 3 weeks ago that you just now want me to work on. And so it's, once again, just segmenting and putting rules in place to tell the person who you are, what you believe, what you love. It has no place here and it never will.
See, that's very interesting, because when I'm applying for jobs or when I'm just looking at websites, I can see all of these white guys, especially, sleeve full of tattoo up to their neck, and then they have this bow haircut that in any place else shouldn't even fly, but it seems to be okay for them. And then they wear shorts, and then they wear sneakers, and you see tattoos on their legs. And I'm like, I have never seen a Black person or a colored person who would dare to go to work on shorts. Or a Black woman. In fact, most Black women can't even carry their full afro to work. Even in Nigeria here, we have that mentality of trying to adopt white people's culture. And so the same rules that apply to Black people, but they also apply to us. Like, I carry dreadlocks, and if I was going to the office, I would have to put it up in a bun, and I won't be able to let it down the way it is right now. So there's so much that we can do, and the rules are completely different for them. And I really align with what you said about your ideas not being validated. Like, you always have to toe a line, which basically stifles your creativity, because anybody in marketing or digital or anything that has to do with this field of SEO marketing, basically a creative. Your ideas, your tactics, this is what sets you apart from everybody else. And if you're always having to be forced to do something someone else has already done before in the past, this old tactic, you can't bring anything new to the table. How are you supposed to grow, to advance? Which is what we face here. So, Edwin, do you think that, as I think you're coming from a slightly different experience, it's the same but slightly different because you are Latino. What do you think are the causes of imposter syndrome? I know you work in corporate. What has been your experience, and what do you think are the causes of that generally for colored people in general?
Yeah, at least in my regard, imposter syndrome, as far as the definition goes, I feel, at least how it applies to me, is this self-doubt, not necessarily a need for validation, but just this constant nagging feeling in that is what I'm doing the correct route? Is what I'm doing the best possible solution? And you know what? I've been fortunate in that I've had good mentors and bad mentors. So the bad mentors I'll be honest, the bad mentors, they're the ones the quickest to crack the whip. The best mentors are the ones that will work with you through and through, acknowledge your faults, but work through them. But even with them, bad and good mentors, the self-doubt continues to persist. And I think it goes back to a degree on, listen, I'm a first generation American, Hispanic American who's working in corporate. I don't have folks to go to and say, who look like me and say, dude, am I doing this right? Is there something I can be doing better? Am I essentially going about it the best way possible? And again, that's why I lean on mentors to help provide, is the feeling I'm having valid? Is there some issue that that is actually exist, or is it perpetuating in my own head? So I think in my head, at least in my case, most of it unfortunately does take place between my earlobes, and it's stuff that I have to cope through. And I think there are solutions for that as well.
I'm not sure. I think despite all of the solutions that people keep perpetuating as a way to get past imposter syndrome, as long as you continue to live in a world where there is no support for Black people in the workplace, where Black people continue to struggle with gaslighting, microaggression, where Black people do not have role models in the workplace, like what you mentioned, Edwin, people who you can turn to for support to say, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? Because you can't go to the wrong person. You're scared that, okay, this person is going to say, oh, he's not capable. Validate that feeling that you're already struggling with. Inherent bias in the workplace. There's so many things that when you bring all of them together, form this big, ginormous ball of self-doubt, fear, sometimes self-loathing, sometimes this feeling of, oh God, I'm going to start dreading work. That is why so many Black and colored people are dissatisfied, unhappy, absolutely hate the workplace because of all these negative experiences that they have. And it is all these things that contribute to imposter syndrome. It's why I think Black people are less likely to stand up and say, okay, I want this promotion, or go to their boss and say, I want a raise, or take no for an answer. It's easy for us to take no for an answer because we're scared already that I don't deserve to be here. And so when they give you anything bottom of the barrel, you're just going to take it because you're already feeling that, okay, anything that comes my way, at least I'm doing better than this Black guy or the next Latino guy who is hustling on the streets. So it's like you're already like feeling like, I'm grateful for this tiny bit of success that I have, this tiny bit of success. So whatever comes trickling down, hey, it's a job. I wake up in the morning, I do it. But that is also the problem when you think of it. You're already isolated from the lack of colored people around you. You're already struggling to advance your career because there are no opportunities for you specifically. You're already dealing with microaggressions from your colleagues and even from the people at the top who are supposed to be supporting you. You're basically drowning. You're really drowning. I don't know if you have anything to add to this, Jamar.
For me, that's a brilliant way to put it because that's what it is. It's drowning. And to your point, like I've been working since I was 16. I'm now 38. I never, before I started my own company, ever asked for a raise. I was just happy. Yes, master, please give me and I'll take it. And I'd be so happy and I'll shuck and jive the way out of your office. And it's just, and I look back and it was just gross. And I was personally embarrassed by the person that I was because at any point I could have stood up and stopped it and I could have demanded what I knew I was worth. But I was so scared of being made an example of being, well, you're ungrateful, you're asking for too much, you don't know your place. And those are not the ways they would ever say it, but that's the feeling that you get when people are talking to you about that. And the most insidious thing about imposter syndrome is once we allow someone else to put that kernel in us, we're the ones really who, Edwin, as you said, is between your 2 ears. We water that plant and we help it grow just as much as anyone else. And I know that was my experience where I started hearing the things that people were saying and really started believing them and never believed the good things that people would say and only believed the negative things. And that's where it started killing me because I didn't need anyone else to fill me with imposter syndrome. I was growing it all on my own.
This is good. This is, you know what, I appreciate this because honestly, the added perspective helps a lot to see the plight of Black folk. I acknowledge that. And ultimately, fortunately on my end, it's been different. It has been different. And that's totally fine. Everyone goes through their own struggles. And at the very least, I felt that there was a support system, or maybe I'm looking at it in a way where maybe there wasn't enough support system. So it's a different take on it, but at least in having the conversation with you two, it sounds as if it's been a lot rougher for you. And I think historically speaking, it has been rough. It has been rough for Black folks when compared to other demographic or other races. So I don't doubt that at all. Not at all. Not an ounce, you know.
Which brings me to my next question. All of these things, I can see two people who I can say that they are basically at fault for this, and it has to do everything with the colleagues that we work with in the workplace and the people who we call our superiors. So because I'm going to share this on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure a lot of HR people that follow me are going to see this. What should leadership teams in corporate world be doing to help Black people build up confidence and feel less alone in the workplace?
For me, it can't be HR, because HR isn't there for employees. HR isn't there for employees. HR is just there to protect the company from things like this. When any of us go into a lab and say, hey, I experienced this, and they're just like, oh, all they want to do is they want to take the experience, sweep it under the rug, pretend it never happened, so the company is not in a very litigious situation. But it's got to be where we start thinking about what leadership truly is. Just because you're great with making a company numbers and you're great with accounting does not mean you are a great leader of people. So we need to think about two tracks of leadership of things and leadership of people. Because if you're great at leading things, you might not have the capacity to talk to people. And also understanding, you don't have to treat everyone equally, but you do have to treat them fairly. The way that a boss speaks to me might be different the way that they speak to y'all. And they need to understand that it can't be a one-size-fits-all management issue. And that's where communication comes in great. That's where we can start getting rid of some of the insidious things that cause that imposter syndrome, because you don't have a boss who just says, this is what I expect from all my employees, do it. Sometimes you have someone who's junior who needs a little bit more help. Some of the best mentors I had, as you were intimating, Edwin, they let me fall. But looking back on it, I realized that they never actually let me hit the ground. They would catch me right before I would hit the ground and bruise myself. They let you have that experience of feeling like you're failing and then lifting you up and saying, hey, this is how you need to make sure to walk down the street safely. You can't just be looking up at the sky. You can't just always be looking forward. You do have to look down and make sure you're taking the right steps. But we're not always able to train the leaders to be able to do that. So we need to be able to break down what leadership is and start filling in those, quit putting square pegs in round holes just because the person is making money. That's cool. Put them in the corner, sit them over in Mordor, let them make that money, do that accounting, and then the people who know how to talk to people, let those be the ones who get everyone together, who are the cheerleaders for the people who don't get seen and heard. And also, when you're in a meeting and a minority is speaking, don't stop them and say, what I think Jamar is trying to say is, no, my words are clear. I was very clear. If the people in the room don't understand, that's a them issue, not a you need to clarify. And I see it, especially men do it with women. It's so disgusting because men think they need to translate. I understood every word she said. There was that one I'm gonna look up later on the Google, but that's not her fault. That's me not reading my books this week.
Yeah, because I was in an SEO room a few weeks, like back when I started Clubhouse. I stayed on Clubhouse for a week and then I left. I just came back today. But back then, I remember that was in an SEO room. There were like 3 women and there was a lot of men, like I think like 10 men on the platform. And they kept talking over the Black woman and the Latino woman who were speaking, and I was so angry. Like I wanted to just shake them and say, let her speak, and exactly what you said. One of them, really big guy, I'm not going to call his name, and she would finish talking and he would call her in the middle of her speech and he'd be like, oh, I think what she's trying to say is, dude, nobody is hard of hearing. And he did this, and he did it so many times. She left the room and nobody even noticed that she had left the room. And she was a speaker, like she was invited to that room. She was the reason I was actually there, because there's so few Black women in SEO that every time a Black woman SEO is speaking, I'm always going to turn up on that Clubhouse room. But they just kept on cutting this woman until she left the room. And then there was just one woman on the podium, and She couldn't even get a chance to even say a word. She would start talking and somebody would just go and be like, oh, sorry, I just wanted to say this before I forget my train of thoughts. Dude, hold your train of thoughts. Hold your bloody train of thoughts. Like, I was so angry. And then they finished that Clubhouse room, and I took a screenshot of that room. I put it on Twitter, and I was like, all you dudes on this platform, shame on you. Let women speak. Usually, this always happens to Black women, always happens. I've been in many projects. I've been on many projects where I was the only Black person. Forget Black woman, only Black person, because like I said, so few Black SEOs that most times when I'm working on large projects, I'm the only Black person there. And then I start to say something and somebody else is cutting in and basically taking my words out of my mouth and relaying them. And I'm standing right there and I'm like, what the hell? So this is very common, very common. I'm going to let Edwin speak because it looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I think going back to your original question on what we can do, and I think it's important to acknowledge first and foremost the differences in experiences. I think I count my blessings time and again, because for me, it could always be worse, and for others, it is worse. And that's, I'll acknowledge that, hands down. I will acknowledge that. And hands down, I think the approach that works for me may not be something that works for everyone else. And it's something I've had to acknowledge, at least in my regards. Everything that exists right now, especially with what's happening in the world, politically speaking, a political climate, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And I'll acknowledge that. You can call it whether it's my weaker psyche or emotional or ability to take in emotions. You can call it whatever you want, but the hands down, what I do is basically I acknowledge it. Like, this is who I am. I understand that. So ultimately, I can sympathize with whomever and the best I can. And the way I feel works, at least for Latinos, I think I'll speak up for Latinos, at least in this conversation. I'll use an example from last year before COVID, where I was presenting at a university. And ultimately, the conversations, meet and greet, presentations, after that, there was just a networking event, and I got to talking to everyone, really diverse crowd. And then an individual came up to me, and we sat down, and it was kind of like after hours, and we sat down, and he's like, let me ask you something, Edwin. Like, how do you do this? What do you do? Like, how do you grow? How do you feel like what you're doing is correct? And I told him, I'm like, I was in the same spot 10 years ago. I don't know. Like, I lean on mentors. I lean on my experiences to help confirm whether or not I'm doing a good job. I must be doing something good. I'm a specialist in my industry and I'm a manager now. So something's got to be working. But I think a part of it is ultimately talking about it, like that young gentleman had done, is just talking about it, acknowledging that it is suffocating. It is suffocating that you feel like you can, not even so much heard, that the value is not there. It is. It's crippling almost. And I think a part of it, in addition to talking through it, is ultimately talking to whomever, whether it be your manager. And if you can, talk to your manager. If you don't have a quarterly or an annual review or biannual review, strive for something regular. Get feedback. So something objective. Try to, at least in my case, remove emotions where possible. I know sometimes it's difficult, but getting an objective review of how you're performing that qualifies, hey, I'm on the right track from a career standpoint. In my case, it's imposter syndrome, I think, takes on a different definition for me. And for me, it's accepting it, like accepting that I do provide value to my team, that I do provide value to my organization, and ultimately I do provide value as a whole.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, because if you accept that you provide value, then you're accepting that you're worth every penny that you make, and it's always going to be easier to have that conversation about getting paid more once and you believe that you have value. Jamar, I was going to ask you, like, as someone who has most definitely dealt with imposter syndrome, how did you make that shift from working for people to starting your own business? Because that requires a high level of confidence and self-belief that holds back a lot of Black people from taking that leap into doing something for themselves.
Honestly, it started with, so one of my close friends, like, he started a job at an agency, called me, knew I was miserable at the job I was, and asked if I would be his, assistant SEO manager. And I was like, no, I'm done with SEO. I'm done with digital marketing. I'm out the game. I'm retired. I'm Barry Sanders. I'm done in my prime. And he kept asking me. And after the 5th time, I was like, fine, let me do another job within the company. I'll come work with you, but I don't want to do that. And so I went, interviewed, and the CEO was just like, no, I want you in this role. I don't care. So put me in the role, and I was sitting around, and after like 3 months of being there, I realized I was so miserable because I was brought in to do a job, and then I just kept getting shifted around doing other things. And they started doing the same thing that other jobs did, trying to put together paperwork to fire me. And so they, after about 6 months there, they moved my friend off of being the SEO manager, moved him over to the product team. They took me and moved me over to the social media team, which was hemorrhaging clients and money. It was a net negative, and they had quarter over quarter, they were losing 50% of their clients. I turned it in the first month. We lost one client. In the first quarter, we didn't lose anyone else. We started becoming a net positive. And I started looking around and saying, okay, if you're putting me in the shit pile and all of a sudden you're looking at it and it's clean and I did that. All right. That's when my imposter syndrome was out the window, because this was proof positive was I just made this shit real good. And they still made me feel miserable. And finally, I went on a vacation for my birthday with my friend. And we had such a good time. And I realized this is a dude who's known me for years, and he loves me unconditionally, warts and all. Why can't people I work with, who I'm making millions of dollars for, love me in the exact same fashion? So 2 days after I got back, I turned in my notice and was just like, yeah, you got 30 days left of this brilliance before I walk my ass out. And then I got 2 weeks in and people were just coming, and I realized, like, this is why I felt bad. Just this bullshit of people coming to me with problems and no solutions, and looking at me and demanding solutions from me, and then bitching that the solutions aren't good enough. It's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And so I left, I started doing this, and I realized all this stuff that people had been putting in my bag, the negatives, the you're not good enough and everything, it didn't matter anymore, because I was building up case studies and proof that the things that I believed were working well. And then last year, when Brother George Floyd was murdered, and I had 60 Twitter followers at that point, and I just made one tweet that said, hey, if you're looking for a Black person who cares about digital marketing, maybe you should reach out to me to start speaking. And all of a sudden, people started doing it. And I realized maybe my way is unorthodox. Maybe it won't work for anyone, but now that I'm being my authentic self, ooh, people are clamoring for it and they love it. So let me just keep going. Plus, this allows me to branch myself out and become a thought leader in a way that isn't normal. I don't care about talking about EAT. I don't care about talking about anything in digital marketing. I care about making sure Black sisters and brothers see me doing this and say, hey, I may not want to do it exactly like him, but there is a path for me to trod, and I can do it because this man has done it. And I want them to understand that they can also reach out, DM me, talk to me. I may not have all the answers. Maybe you don't even want answers. Maybe you just want someone to listen to you. That's all we need. And that helps that imposter syndrome go away when you look and say, what I'm doing works for me.
Okay, I'm going to 100% agree with you there, because I tell people this every time I pitch to a big publication website. It's because I've seen another Nigerian do it. Every time I've worked with a big brand, it's because I've seen someone who looks like me do it. Every time I've done something amazing that people have congratulated me on, saying, how did you do this? Always because somebody else that I know has done it. So I cannot overstate the importance of that visibility, of being out there, of giving opportunities to Black people, because that visibility is really, really huge. I feel like it's even the biggest thing that helps people get past that imposter syndrome. Just seeing someone who looks like you killing it there in that thing that seems impossible makes you feel like, oh yeah, if this person has done this, then for sure. I remember the first time I saw a Nigerian like me charging $1,000 for coffee. At the time I was charging 200, and I was like, okay. I was looking at some really big SaaS company, and he lives in Lagos, Nigeria here. And I'm like, if this guy lives in Nigeria and is charging this much for content, then I can do the same. And that was when I raised my rates, just by knowing that somebody else could charge that much for coffee while living in Nigeria. And I spoke to him and he told me that, yeah, this is what he charges. So definitely, most definitely, So this has been a very, very interesting conversation. I should have learned so much, especially from Jamar, like that shift that you made from working for people, putting up with everything that you went through as a Black person. Oh my God, to have come this far, growing your own business is incredible. You just seem to have everything together, which is amazing. Amazing. Seriously, I love that.
I don't have everything together. I don't have everything together by any means. Like me, I think a year ago I was talking to a coworker and I was probably like this. And we were talking about like growing careers and I was honest. I was like, I'm a hot mess. I'm a hot mess. I'm always on edge. I'm always trying to figure out, like, am I doing everything correctly? And then he just looks at me and he's, but you're always calm. And I'm like, yeah, I try to be. No, I'm not. I don't have everything together, but I do try to be composed to a degree.
I like, it's great that we both have two different approaches. Like Edwin,
Yeah.
like you talking and you say like, you are very calm. And I tell people like, it's not the best way to live, but it works for me. Like anger fuels me. Like the worst thing you can do is slight me. Because you're going to learn. But it helps me. It like, there's something about the anger that gives me that clarity,
Yeah.
that moment of just, I can look at something automatically and things slow down for me. And I'm like, this is the solution. These are the steps I need to take. So just like anyone who's listening to this, watching this, any recording, there's not one way to do things. Figure out what works for you, figure out your personality and start building that up. Create what I call a mental, so all of the garbage stays out of your brain, but all the good shit trickles in, and the good stuff trickles in slowly so you can enjoy those little moments of wins. Like I tell my business partners, every time a little thing happens, stop, take a breath, enjoy it. If we sign on a client and it's only $2K a month, stop and be like, damn, that's $2K more than we had yesterday though. That's awesome, because you can all of a sudden be like, oh, but it was supposed to be 10K. It's like, it could have been 0 too. So the little wins, let those things trickle in, because that's what's going to get you. Don't wait like I did and look back 10 years and be like, oh, there were some great moments. Just you don't get to enjoy those. And it seems like things are harder. So Edwin, I want to congratulate you on being able to work in that calm space. That's a great message to put out there for people. Just because you're a hot mess inside, if you project that calmness, that's why people are coming and asking you, because they see, damn, he looks like he's got it together. And then you get to tell them the truth. No, I don't, but this is how I'm able to project that.
I appreciate that, Jamar. And I think on my end, I think it's fantastic how transparent you are, how passionate you are about seeing more colored folks in areas of professional settings. So again, what you're doing, being an example, leading, taking charge, and honestly, taking the bull by the horns, I do applaud you on that.
All right. Thank you so much to both of you, Jamar, Edwin. Thank you so much. I'm going to post this at some point this week. So thank you both for coming on and for talking about this. I'm going to end the recording now and sign off on the Clubhouse room.